Lately, I've been putting together a program about how to benefit from psychological, economic, and risk management insights, specifically how not to rely on consultants and gurus. And this is very important for the business professional, for the entrepreneur, for high income professionals. Most advice that's available online is meant for a large mass population. And there's logical reasons for that I'm going to go into. But ultimately, how do you profit from expert advice? I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. Number one is understand that there are people who are experts in their field, who are knowledgeable, and they have ideas and concepts that can help you in your business. That is a fact. The problem is that the skills that can help you in business are not necessarily the skills that can be used to generate business and make a living off of the expert business. What this basically means is these gurus, the more guru they are, the less likely they have specialized experience in your area. Their skills are selling books, gaining an audience, and ultimately getting people to follow them, not necessarily solving problems. Now, can they provide useful insight? Yes. However, the truth about consultants that get results, consultants that work for Fortune 100 companies, that work for small and growing businesses, a $10 million business turning it to $20 or $30 million, they aren't the easiest people to work with. In fact, their job is to identify pain points in your organization, bring them to light, and then develop solutions to solve those problems. These are the same problems that you've been ignoring in your own personal life, that you've been ignoring in the business, that you don't believe exist, and that's why you haven't taken any action to solve them. A real consultant or a coach or a mentor or someone who's going to come in is not going to give you the popular opinion. Now, if you want to gain an audience and you want to do a talk show, you want to talk popular opinion, you want to talk us versus them, you want to build controversy, you want to ultimately gain an audience, that's fine, but that's a different business model. A consultant who solves problems for businesses is not necessarily very popular. So first off, I'll give you some of my own experiences. I never fit into the culture of my clients. I've studied organizational psychology. I tend to identify and see the flaws in your current culture, and then I feel compelled to fix them. Because, of course, you've hired me to solve problems, and if I see, for example, toxic managers, I'm going to call that out. I'll put that on the punch list, and then we'll need to address that. Now, I understand why they're toxic, and maybe it's middle management, maybe it's senior management, but as a consultant, I'm hired to be the outsider and to see the challenges in your environment and to raise them so that we can resolve them. Now, the risk management element of that is I'm looking for things like privacy risk. I'm looking for third-party risk. I'm looking for human resources risk. I'm looking for risks associated to the processes that you implement. And so I'm not really looking at the people as much as the implementation and the work getting done, because in my mind, it's an organization full of roles and responsibilities. That's how you create the deliverable. So I'm not going to fit in your culture. Sometimes the folks that hire me think that I should conform to their culture. Well, you're hiring me because you have problems that you don't know how to solve, and conforming to your culture just perpetuates the problem. And so you have to understand, I'm not there to be popular. I'm there for you to get results and then to leave. My job isn't to camp out at your site. Now, many of you folks have hired consultants, have written in and said, hey, look, I got this consultant. It's like I'm getting my kitchen remodeled. They've set up shop. They get coffee every morning, and they hang out all day long, and they ask my employees questions, and they ask me questions, and they're in deep thought most of the day, and I'm not getting anything accomplished. Well, that's not a consultant, that's a guru, and they've tricked you into coming in and camping out and you paying their retainer or whatever you're paying them, rather than giving you the benefit of psychological, economic, and risk management insights. Now, it's a two-way street here, though, because you can go do psychological assessments, you can do leadership assessments, you can look at the hard numbers, that statistically accurate assessment, and still not do anything because you don't have the catalyst for change. It's supposed to hurt when you pay top dollars to a consultant. but how do you know you're getting the right advice? First off, most consultants are not BFF material. BFF stands for best friends forever. They are the uncomfortable place you have to go to solve problems. It's like going to the gym. A gym just needs to be clean and safe. Not a safe space, like it's not going to hurt your feelings, because when you get in there and you're thinking, oh, 150 pounds, I could bench that no problem. Oh, man, I know people that are benching 400 pounds. 150 pounds, you got to be weak not to be able to bench it. And then you go to bench it, and you're like, oh, my gosh, you don't have the form. You don't have the stamina. You don't have any of the skill set. You've been sitting in an office all your life, and why else would you expect that it be difficult to lift? And maybe you can lift it, but you can't lift it a whole set of 8 reps. And so now you hate the gym. Well, it's not the gym's fault that you're weak. It's you just haven't built up to it. So maybe you should cut back and go down to 75. And if 75 is too heavy, you go down to 45. If that's too heavy, then you start looking at your health and nutrition. You start looking at your lifestyle change. It is supposed to be a hard decision, because when you overcome the difficulty of the decision and the labor that's required to get back on track, you tend to stay on track. Think about it. If you feel like you're overweight and your heart's having problems and your doctor asks you to exercise and you don't exercise, there isn't any magic that's going to improve your heart. In my particular case, I don't sleep very well, and I sleep better now, and I've educated myself, and I've gone through the struggle, and I've gone through the frustrations. But in the past, I'd stay up 24 hours, 72 hours. I'd stay up for days at a time to get a problem solved. I'd go over the line as far as what's expected of me when it comes to whether I'm working with a client or an employer or anybody. And then I would suffer. And that suffering was necessary for me to realize I didn't want to suffer anymore. I didn't want to be in the middle of the day, exhausted and tired and passing out. Now, when you're starting a business, and I was in the entrepreneurial stage, and you're going to have these kinds of things, but you've got to learn how to delegate. You've got to learn how to interact with people in a way that you can get the help that you need, so that you don't destroy yourself as you're going towards your dreams, desires, and outcomes. And that's where a coach comes in, because a coach can help you with that maintenance. You can check in with the coach. Now, again, coaches and mentors are about the same thing. Mentors might be inside of an organization. I've had some incredible mentors, and I didn't like them all. Just to be honest with you, some mentors told me stuff that I needed to hear, that I didn't want to hear, and I suspected they might be there. But they told me like it was, hurt my feelings once, instead of allowing me to go around like an idiot forever. And that's really what you don't want a guru. You don't want somebody who's popular. You want to find that individual who can solve real problems and is willing to tell you the truth about your business. Now, just because they're telling you the truth, are they right? Not necessarily. It's possible that in the consultation that you didn't share all the details of the circumstances. It is possible that there's other prejudices or concerns or frustrations that haven't been put on the table. And that's why a lot of times I'll do assessments, because an assessment can extract from a client those things that they're consciously subverting. So I wrote a story a while back about a client whose son was gay. Okay, he was completely not for it. Now this client is a remodeler, and basically I'll give you a short sum of the story. But he was quite upset that his son wasn't. Well, his son was manly. It's not like he was, but it was like the father was disappointed and upset, and I had to say to him, look, that's your kid, not your life, and what is it, what does this really have to do with your business? And he's like, well, I'm expecting the kid to take over the family business. I'm expecting this, I'm expecting that. And I said, well, what does your kid want? Because your kid's living their own life, and you're living your life and the kid's life. So a long story short, what ended up happening, it turns out that this is New York City, the community in which this kid was in loves to remodel, and essentially ended up being a good personal relationship and a good business relationship. Now, my role as a consultant was the business only. I didn't want to get involved with the personal things. I don't have the same beliefs as this individual. I just wanted to help them grow their business. but growing their business was cultivating better relationships, and these relationships started at home. So if you're frustrated with your home life, it's hard to have a good, successful business. Now, you don't have to necessarily accept people that go against your beliefs. You don't have to do a lot of things in life, but you do have to be honest with yourself and ask, is what I am doing the problem? And can I get help and accept the help and be honest with myself about the circumstances? Now, I could have been completely wrong if the outcomes didn't turn out the way they needed to turn out. The outcome that this gentleman needed, because they hired me for this, was to grow the remodeling business. They had a couple locations. They needed more jobs. They needed larger jobs and transactions, and they didn't know how to market. And really subconsciously, there were several markets that he was ignoring because his personal distractions, and ultimately when he made good with his kid, doesn't have to, you can love the kid, doesn't have to accept what the kid's doing, but overall it turns out he loves the kid, he's fine with what the kid's doing because it's the kid's life, and ultimately it was great for business. If I find a link, I'll put it in the description below, but I wrote about this case study, and it just really shows that psychological value. If you've got fears, frustrations, concerns, if you're worrying about other people and what they should do versus who you are and what you should do, then you will very often get distracted. You'll be left out of the results that you're looking for, and that you're ultimately going to be frustrated. Now remember, I'm a catalyst for outcomes, not a long-term fixture. A really good consultant, a really good coach, a really good even service provider is not there forever. They aren't there to replace who you are and what you do. They're there to solve specific problems, create outcomes, and leave you more capable of solving those problems again in the future. Because here's the thing. If I'm helping you develop a team to manage your website, you got a publishing company, we're putting together a team to manage the website. That team needs to be loyal to you, not to me. Now, if I come in as a services provider, that's a different story because you're paying for a fixed set of services, and then I personally, as the consultant, will not be involved with that. You're going to get your fixed set of services. That's a different business model, and that's fine. You can get very often a lot of companies, even if they got like $10 million in sales, don't have full-time web staff on site. So one of my areas of specialty is document management. Document management leans into publishing. So I find that a lot of these organizations could share the same webmaster or the same SEO team or the same content development team, as long as they're all serving the same audience, and they're going to basically have fractional ownership, and they're going to get results, but that's a service. That's not something I come in and do every week. I might come set it up and help their team set it up and interview people and determine what needs to be done to get the outcome that you're looking for, but I'm going to draw up a plan and hand you the plan. Now, whether or not you implement the plan is really up to you, but again, to benefit from these elements, there has to be implementation, and the implementation has to be done by you or your team. So again, if you're hiring a services provider, that's your team. They're filling a role. If that services provider doesn't perform, you need to replace them and put somebody else in place. So again, this is really about how top consulting firms are really about that reputation, that influence, that relationship, that breakthrough for you as the person who made a decision to hire them. And then they leave you with plans, points of action, approaches that you can now implement, and you are the hero. They don't come in to be heroes themselves. That's a guru. That's somebody who's trying to get liked. That's somebody who's trying to get followers. A real consultant, someone who creates results, is more of a finder or more of a fixer. They come in behind the scenes. They help you solve specific problems. They leave you with specific plans, and then they go away. Now, you can call them back anytime you want if you need additional help, but you better not be calling them back for the same problems. And again, the psychological elements. How are you fixing your thinking? How are you improving your approach? How are you seeing the world differently? The economic solutions. Is the investment in the consultant generating revenue? and solving not only the original problem, but the new problem of having to invest in a consultant. And finally, the risk management insights. Are we solving problems in a way that they don't come back? Okay, now some problems might come back at a lower degree than previously, but it's about that plan. Did you implement that plan? Has that plan been executed as it was designed? Does the design need to be adjusted? You don't need a consultant to hang out. It's not a kitchen remodel. You don't need the consultant to hang out month after month to solve the problem. And that's happened sometimes with some even big top 4 consultants, is they're going to camp out. They got a certain number of people on staff, and those people on staff need billable hours, and so they'll come up with reasons to keep coming back. That is not as effective as finding yourself a specialist, finding yourself a focused individual, and find somebody who can solve problems. Just understand, again, that they're a catalyst. They're not your best friend forever. They're not going to fit into your culture, but they are going to help you get results. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and this podcast is about you getting results, about you transforming business relationships into profits. If you're not sure what that means to your organization, then visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Go to the contact page and ask your questions. This podcast is built on the questions of high-income professionals, senior-level executives, organizations who are striving to do better and to do more. And so I thank you for the questions that you've sent in so far. Today we've talked about how I'm not your guru. I'm not here to be popular. I'm not here to get a bunch of likes and followers. I'm here to help you get specific outcomes in a consistent and repeatable way. We do that through psychology, economics, and risk management insights. Really, that kind of all rolls together into what we call business development. And so again, if you have any questions about this or anything I've ever covered in this podcast, we have more than 200 episodes. You can certainly visit www.insidestrategicrelations.com, ask your question, and I will get back with you on the podcast or on some of the content on our membership site or a special report, because it's so important you understand these things. These gurus are going around being popular, and they're not solving problems, but they're receiving large amounts of money for basically telling you what you already know. If you already knew the answer, you just fixed the problem. You need results. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next podcast.